Welcome back. We've been working for 6 years to rebuild a sunken fishing trawler against some serious odds. We're getting it ready to take our supporters to some amazing places and to do some awesome projects around the world. Our job is to find a way.
We've just passed our 200th episode, which is a massive milestone for us and for the project, and it's something that wouldn't have been possible without a bloody awesome community wrapped around this boat. We've had some amazing people come by and help us on the boat, donate tools, their expertise, and give us advice as to how to make this a better project. So we just wanted to really say thank you!
We love you!
You awesome people! We're carrying on with the galley rebuild in Brupeg. In order to get the benches in, we need to get the walls on. And in order to get the walls signed off, we need to get everything behind them sorted. So we've got riv-nuts, we've got battens, insulation and wiring. Okay, the cable that we're using is a 2mm tinned 3-core, so two core and an earth. We don't need that, we can go to 1.5mm. What's that, 1/16 of an inch? No idea what that is in gauge, because that's a ridiculous way of measuring wire. But this is way bigger than we need to. So for a 10 amp plug, we don't need any more than 1.5mm. You can do an extension cord, a 15 meter extension cord for a 10 amp can be 1.5mm. We've gone 2mm, and the full run is about 7.5 meters. So yeah, we're kind of oversizing it a bit, but that's what we do. 1 meter mark, right, 1/2 meter, so 3/4 sticking out. I know some people might scoff at the use of plastic zip ties for this AC cable. However, people seem to get worried about, you know, if you're in a boat fire and the wiring starts to crash down over your head, etc. So use stainless zip ties and things like that. Overhead wiring, absolutely will use the stainless zip ties. However, this is behind a stainless panel that's bolted on. There's like no possible way, if these fail, like you wouldn't even probably know that they've failed because they're again behind a stainless panel. So I'm happy to use plastic zip ties on the walls, but anything going overhead will be stainless. We've got stainless zip ties and the little tool that you need to tighten them up, but plastic are just miles easier, especially right at the moment, because for all I know I might be pulling this out in 10 minutes and blooming changing it. I don't think so, but just in case, it's just so much easier doing it with plastic at this stage. I don't know what the rule is in terms of how far the zip ties need to be apart, so I'm probably doing more than you need to. The bowman and me can't leave one of those lines untidily. Right, I think we'll duct tape that up there. Cool. Snippy, snippy. Done. Right. Let's show you what I actually did. So this is our cable tray with our cable runs zip tied in. So nice and neat. If I go follow it all the way down, you can sort of see it goes right to the ground, and then the tails just fire off into the distance. Well, that's basically how we do our cabling. Drive around the boat like that in those perforated cable trays, and then neatly zip tied in a uniform pattern. This is our window frame. So it's now mostly complete. So we've got a couple of really thick coats, 3 coats around here of resin, and we've got a hole there that exits just there, and at the top we've got one in that area there, and that exits just up in there. Now the trick with this window frame is it gets bonded onto the steelwork up on this side here of the cabin. It's a wee bit hard to show you with the light, the camera has a little bit of a hissy fit. We're going to bond that on now, and then we're going to start sizing up the windows and everything afterwards. They're going to happen later. That's not going to happen at this stage. We just need to get this in so that we can get this stainless panel that we've been putting on back and forth, get that on top of that, and then start sizing out that internal cut. My plan with this is to use an adhesive. We've got adhesive in a sausage tube in our gun. We're going to glue it onto this part of the wall all the way around, and these are the original bolt holes that you might be able to see coming through the steelwork. What I'm going to do is put this up into the position and then just fine tune it with the edges, make sure they're as close as I can get it. And then I'm going to be putting screws from the outside in. The reason I want to put the screws in, yes, I'm going to pierce the epoxy, but it's going to be a perfect way to hold this with no clamps and make sure that it's exactly where I want it to dry. I can also adjust the tension quite a bit, so I don't want to rack it up real tight and squeeze all of the adhesive out. I want to have it tight enough that there's going to be maybe at least 1 millimetre or 2 of adhesive there, and then once that's dry, then I can tighten them up and get it really nice and tight. The alternative is I can even take the screws out of it on the other side and then fill those holes up with resin, so it gives me some options later on. That's why I'm doing it that way. I also want to have no clamps holding this together because I want to be able to carry on doing the wall insulation, all that sort of stuff. Clamps are just a pain in the neck. There's a wee bit of finishing work to do on this, so I do need to sand this and go around and fill up a couple of little holes and dimples in the actual plywood itself, and then I want to paint it matte black between the window panes, so I'm going to actually finish it on the boat, but for now that's enough to put it up and carry on with the rest of our work. So I've had a bit of a think about where I'm actually going to put cable trays and cable runs and things like that. This area here is basically covered up by the bench. It's very difficult to get in behind the bench. This big splashback along there is all solid, and we have no plans to chop into that and make it unsolid. There's an air conditioner that goes across here. So this panel theoretically would be a great place to have the cables because you've got your hydraulics. It could be like a service panel, but there's too much stuff on the wall that affects it, and we can't move the air conditioner because it needs to be here in order to blow forward into the two cabins that are behind the camera, and we can't move it that way because there's cupboards, and also you'd end up with an air conditioner in a very tiny little space, so it kind of defeats the purpose of having a big air conditioner. We can move it this way, but again then you cut off all the airflow onto that side of the room, so it kind of doesn't work. It has to stay in the centre where it is. This side here becomes easier and easier to start moving stuff. There's just a shelf here, potentially cupboards, but basically just a shelf, and taking panels off here is pretty straightforward. So what I'm thinking of doing, rather than bring the cables and running them down like that, I'm just going to leave this set of cable trays here as they are. That's just DC control cables that go from the bridge to the engine room. I'm going to just ignore those and put in a new set down this way. So what I'm thinking is the hole that I need to cut, the new circuit board is just, the AC circuit board is just behind this wall here, roughly that height, somewhere around there. What I'm thinking, punch a hole through the wall where those cables have to go, and then run the cable trays up the roof and sort of out. Anywhere on the roof is easy to deal with because we can take a panel down, there's going to be nothing other than the wall panel and the roof panel to remove. So if I punch a hole in this bulkhead here, bring the AC cables through, straight into a cable tray up, and either over to the side or up and out, it makes it much, much simpler, and it also is simpler in terms of what I have to do on this wall. I was going to do quite a big sort of distribution cable tray, don't need to do any of that now. Bring it all up to the roof, bring it along the roof, and then down into the various spots that I need it. It gets way simpler if I do it this way compared to trying to do it behind the bench. So that's my plan. Bollocks. but it is in the right place. Right, let's get some paint on that. So all I've done is basically a couple of nicks and folded that over so that it's folded over at a 90, and then down the bottom I've done a couple of nicks and then folded it so it's kind of like a little wiggle, and it leaves it about 20 mil off the wall, and then I can throw some 20 mil insulation behind it. I don't need to, I'm probably just going to leave this panel uninsulated. It's a completely internal wall and there's no like door to stop heat transferring straight through there, so it's probably going to make zero difference if I insulated it. It's more just me being pedantic. That's been known to happen. Don't call this the last job of the day. Alright. So we go. Oh, bloody hell. Butcher's breakfast of that one, Damien. We're going to have to clamp this, it's starting to slide down. So I smear the crap out of it at the top here, over all of the little holes, etc. Because then I know when it sets, it's basically grabbed every possible area that it can, if that makes sense. It's best to do this with your fingers because it's the most disgusting way of doing it. Right, I need some duct tape or something. You're going to stay there enough. Let's get some tape on you. I had tape, what did I do with it? Jess, are you on the boat? Can you grab me some tape when you... We've had a slight change of plan. See all this duct tape that's holding the window together? That is because we had a surprise with the paint last night. It's not often that we go and use a new paint on Brupeg without first testing and things like that because of the smells and whatnot with Jess. However, in this case, I thought because it's sandwiched between two pieces of glass, we're never going to smell it. It's going to be a sealed tank essentially. However, oh my God, this paint, it was the most feral smell. It smelled exactly like fly spray and it fumigated the boat out, so we had to just tape it. Today's job is to sand the whole lot off. We're going back to paint that we know, a Jotun 2-pack, we're going to throw it on there. We used this paint specifically because it was a matte. I wanted a matte black in that area. I don't necessarily have easy access to matte Jotun 2-pack, so what we're going to do is use a gloss. I have a black gloss that I can get, and then we're going to sand it with 1200 and basically get it down to a fine dull finish. We want the dull finish so that we don't have lots of reflections inside the two panes.
Ooh, what's that pink goo? It's still there, he's touching it. Why is he not dealing with this?
I'll deal with my pink bits my own sweet time. This is what we ended up with. So right the way around, we basically sanded it down as far as we can sort of go. We've got rid of the bulk of the crappy paint. We're going to fill up all of these sort of gaps and everything. We're going to be using our 2-pack high build fairing paint, so put a couple of layers of it on there and we'll be able to smooth out any imperfections, but we'll also seal the wood off really well because I've no doubt gone into the wood in a couple of places. It had thick epoxy on it, but I've definitely gone through it in places. We lost the footage of putting this into the window, but the stuff that we use is a fire retardant expanding foam. This stuff expands 30 times its original volume, so it's great for filling gaps and so on. Now we don't use this in many places, we use it pretty sparingly because it's $40 a can, so it's pretty darn expensive. But it's fantastic for getting into weird little curves and corners and things like that where you really need to pack in some insulation, but it's going to be too much work to try and do it with a solid insulation piece like the polystyrene that we use. Exactly how I'm going to clean this up, I'm hoping to do it like this. Huzzah! When I trimmed this up last night, I had to slice in with my wood saw and clean that all up. All of these weird bits started squeezing out. I didn't realise that, but the middle hadn't necessarily fully set. So when I opened it, it started setting straight away, but it started expanding and squeezing out the gaps. Okay, so what Jess has done is drawn a line all the way around this inside radius, so this size here. Now we have to go down a further 30mm right the way around, and we can't physically get a pen in there and be accurate, so you can sort of see it's only about a finger width wide. Way too hard to try and get a pen in there or a scribe, something like that. So what the plan is cut this out, and then we're going to make a small jig that uses this face to run around and extends a pen out 30mm on the other side of the stainless. We're going to mark right the way around. Sounds a wee bit complex, but it'll be pretty straightforward when you see what we're going to do. On our window frame, we have a 30mm lip all the way around, so from here to that surface there is 30mm. We need to take the stainless out to this line here. At the moment we've got it basically to this line, so we made a little jig. Let me show you this jig. We've been waiting for months for this jig to arrive. We ordered it and it was on a boat, got stuck in Egypt. They knew how important it was to the project, so they unpacked it specifically for us and sent it across. It was awesome. So what we can do with this is basically slide all the way down and around, knowing that we're going to get exactly marked onto that line. So works a treat. Available from custompenmarkinggadgets.com.
Clever man.
Right, should we get this metal up? We need the bolts.
Really, it's such a small wall, isn't it?
It's tiny. They're all tiny, but they're just a stupid amount of work in each one, eh?
I know.
Alright, let's get this metal up, eh?
Met him on a sunny day in late July, and everything turned upside down. I almost lost track of time as weeks went by. I couldn't get him off my mind. I told him I want that great love, like standing in the middle of a bonfire. You don't know how you got there, but you hold tight, knowing that you can't get burned.
A special thank you to Paul and Wendy for dropping in and giving us an amazing gift.
Okay.
It's going to look beautiful with that.
It's going to look good, eh?
Yeah.
That grey makes a beautiful job with things, eh?
Oh, good. Well, that looks really good. Just enough?
Yeah.
Just enough, eh?
It's not ideal. So I knew that it was from this face of the wood here to the pen, to the centre of the pen was 30mm, and that's the distance between this grey face and the face that's tucked in down there, the timber that's tucked in down there. And that basically marks out the line that we need to cut on the stainless so that we can have the window bond in and we can access all of the bonding and everything later on.
It's excellent. You can see the difference between there and there.
Yeah.
There and there.
I'm going to double check that just in case I've got it.
It actually looks really correct, doesn't it? But
yeah, let's double check
it makes sense. It's not accurate, you know, like it's not uniform.
Yeah. Yeah, the pen almost looks worse when you run over it.
Very slight difference. Maybe just double check this one over here as well.
I'll do all four just in case. Oh, that was pretty good. The way that our windows on Brupeg work is we bond a 10mm toughened piece of glass on the outside of the cabin here. That's a standard way to bond to do a trawler window these days. It's basically just bonded direct to the paintwork on the outside. We need to have this surface here be a matte colour, and we want a matte black so there's the least amount of reflection possible. So what we're going to be doing is painting it with a 2-pack, a polyurethane top coat. It'll be a gloss black, but we're going to put a couple of layers on, and then we'll do a 1200 grit sand and just take all of the shine off it, so it's just a nice flat colour with no reflections. The second pane on our double glazing goes in this gap here. So this is a 15mm slot. So we have 5mm of fixed-tech adhesive, and then we have 10mm of glass. Now we use laminated glass on the inside. We've got toughened on the outside and we use laminated on the inside. Mainly it's a cost thing. We don't need to put toughened glass on the inside, and 10mm is excessive for double glazing.
It really is.
But for us, because the laminate glass is relatively cheap compared to the toughened, the laminate glass is relatively cheap. And for us it's just a safety factor. If for whatever reason the outside window falls off, wave punches a hole in it, blows it out, we've got another layer of 10mm glass on the inside, so it's basically a safety factor for us up the front end of the boat.
If you're tuning in for the first time or only a couple of episodes in to our channel, you might not be aware, most boats, they can go all sorts of places around the world, but Brupeg is being designed a little bit more stringently because we want to be safe, but we want to go to hardy areas, like really difficult areas. We want to not be thinking about survival all of the time. So it may seem excessive what we do sometimes, and it may seem a slow build, but it's because of that, but also because, a couple that are travelling around the world on their yacht, it's very different than having 6 people, patrons, coming with us on a leg of a journey or doing a project with us. They're people we've got to look after. We're responsible for looking after them. So we've got to be really, really careful. We've got to overdo things. If it's slow, but bear with us, there's a reason. And it'll be fun. Once we're in some of these places, we're going to have a hoot of a time. It's going to be interesting and a bit scary sometimes. Cold, really hot. There's going to be a lot of challenges.
It's partly why we say things like go where others won't. It's like Brupeg will quite literally be able to smash and punch its way into some real shithole places of the worst, like real crap weather and all that, while everyone else is running for cover, we'll be smashing into it, like going to somewhere awesome. So
and apparently this boat was already like that. Apparently the original owners, they'd often be heading back out to the fishing field when other boats were trying to come in out of a storm, and they'd just carry on. So
Bruce and Peggy, if you're watching, your daughter Christine dobbed you in and told us that you videotaped punching through a cyclone in this thing up the top end of Australia. When you couldn't run away to get behind an island, you just stuck it out and smashed into it. So yeah, we know about that behaviour.
Damien and I have had words many times. He's not to chase storms. So this is not like we're going to go looking for this. But if we happen to end up in it, we want to know that we're safe. You're not allowed to.
Ish.
Right,
let's take out Captain Galling. Okay, you right?
Yeah, I'm just holding it. You just move it as you want.
Just come down.
Look who has stolen my seat. Hey, baby. Sitting asleep. Surprisingly heavy for what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those really bloody awkward bits of metal. Okay, works as an escape hatch. That check's done.
There's that much steel.
Yeah.
Where does the insulation sit?
Oh, I see what you mean. We have to dimple the roof up. So the roof will be about here somewhere, 120 mils about there.
So it comes
So
up.
it comes up and we dimple it up to the window.
So that thin line at the top doesn't matter,
No.
other than it's not stable.
Yes. I was thinking of sickering all the way around this anyway so that shit can't go under it. Like just a thin bead, but just enough to hold the edge right the way in. And
I just can't see how you're going to get the visual of stainless against the roof, the ceiling.
The roof's going to have to come, I'm going to have to get it really perfect. It'll be close, but I'm confident I can get that. I was thinking of doing a rim of screws around these into the wood, screwing the actual metal in. We could maybe still look at even doing that.
Okay.
God, it's flimsy.
The final fit is what this is.
The final fit. Righto, in terms of sequence, there's quite a few things that have to happen in a very specific order for this whole thing to work. So once the bench is in, I don't want to have to take it out because it's a mission to get it in and out. So what we're thinking, we have to get this vent done. So that's what that means is basically insulation down this wall, insulation over the back here. We have to waterproof everything so that if any water does get down here, it's not going to go into the insulation. And then we have to glue the aluminium plate that goes on this side, and that's a permanent installation that's not coming off. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. Second thing that needs to happen is the windows need to go in, both the outside and the inside. And the reason being is because we've got a hole top and bottom that we're going to be using to fill with argon and remove the atmosphere that's in there.
Anyone who has a concern about gas being in the window, I had the same concern. It's non-flammable.
So argon is a noble gas. Basically, it's used for welding. So the gas that comes out of a MIG welder or a TIG welder is generally argon and sometimes CO2 and a few others, but basically argon is completely non-flammable, inert. So if your room's on fire and you fill it with argon, the fire's going out, end of story.
When welders talk about a mix, they're talking about argon with something else normally, aren't they?
Yeah, so we often weld with argon and helium or argon and oxygen. But you can do argon and CO2 as well. We're going 100% argon in the gap between the two panes, and to do that we've got a hole top and bottom. Argon is heavier than oxygen, so we need to fill it from the bottom. Think of it like water filling up a tank. It'll displace the oxygen and atmosphere at the top. So we're going to push the argon in through the bottom, and then we're going to let the oxygen come out the top, and then when that's done we'll plug both of them off with adhesive, and that window's sealed. It's not coming apart again basically, and if we do, we lose the argon.
If it does leak,
worst case scenario, if this window leaks, the argon basically falls to the ground because it's the heaviest gas of the atmosphere. Basically it'll fall to the ground and it'll just go out either the bilge or like it'll work its way right to the very bottom of the boat.
and that amount's not toxic.
Yeah.
Like, it's toxic if you were breathing it in directly, but
So
it'll dissipate.
The atmosphere that you're breathing right now is 4% argon. So when if you're welding in a tank, for example, you have to be really careful not to fill the tank with argon because you can't breathe. And welders die from that. So that's why when we're welding in tanks, we always have a lot of safety gear to make sure that doesn't happen.
And a vacuum pulling the argon out from the bottom of the
It's actually
tank.
the simplest way of creating a safe welding space is a vacuum cleaner on the very bottom of it, pulling the argon out because it falls to the bottom, sucks it out, and away it goes, and there's no problem. With this here, if we were to lose all of this gas into this room, it's going to be less than 4% of the room's volume, so it's irrelevant. It's not going to make any difference.
Just don't put your mouth over the crack of the window or something.
Yeah, and at that point, we're ready to put this stainless steel wall up. Once we've got that wall up, we can then fit the bench. However, before we fit the bench, we need to run some cable trays down on this wall.
And you're doing cable trays along here, right?
Yeah, we're going to run a cable tray along the roof. That's kind of like the backbone of the electrics on this side, and then we're going to run little trays that come down behind the stainless. So if we ever need to change wiring, we can take a roof panel off rather than having to take the stainless off. We have to insulate each of these gaps. So this is one layer of 60mm insulation, polystyrene, hence the 10mm of timber. We also need to do air conditioning piping. So these are our old air conditioning pipes here. They're too short and long story, they're no good anymore. So we're going to be replacing those. Now, one challenge that we did have with these pipes is we used the standard insulation that comes with the pipes, just the foam crappy stuff that goes on the pipes, and we found it to be absolute garbage. The reason being is the pipes run through our battery box, and in that area, the cold pipes was touching the hot air, condensation was happening and it was dripping down, it was creating puddles inside our battery area and our electrics area, so that's not going to work.
The worst thing ever.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is basically run the pipes, create a mould, and then we're going to use a bit more of this fire retardant spray foam, and we're going to completely encapsulate the pipes.
The stainless panels, because we're doing wraparound, Damon informed me this morning, we were thinking we had to do a panel cutout that we can lift on and off, bolt on and off this whole area, but in actual fact we don't need to access this at all really, unless we're going to have a little sort of thing here so we can access this part of the hydraulics, and underneath is accessible, so we don't need to access this little bit. This is the wiring, so it's just going to be this panel here is removable, and then there'll be a panel for the rest of the wall, so it's quite a big bit. It's going to be fun lifting that. So once the wall's organised, we'll get the plinth glued in, get the cabinets on top of that, start fitting the cabinets. They have to be screwed in and things like that and lifted slightly. We'll get the plumbing connected up, we'll have running water again, and then we've got to make the other 2 lots of plinths, get those cabinets in, get the fridge in, and we'll do the ceiling after. We're going to have the kitchen and the galley in before we get the roof done, because we haven't decided how to do that yet. Momentous moment, really. Wow, that's a good card. Look at that. That is sticking out.
We'll get that in though. I reckon we'll be. My OCD won't allow that to stay out. That'll be perfect.
Wow.
Happy with that?
Yeah. That's amazing. Oh, what a good job, Danny. Beautiful. Just a little bit of a
might need to just
cut
go
there that's wrong.
Yeah, might just need to maybe sand the edge just.
I actually think that's the only spot. Let me show you a close-up of this work of art.
You know what?
And I don't mean Damien.
I might have to trim this top, because look at this bow.
I know, that's what I was saying. It's really. How did that happen?
Like I just have to cut it and then.
Did it heat up or something when you?
Might have.
That's what it looks like. There's a little bit here that needs. It's just the wood is just over the metal, so we'll just trim that back and repaint. But everywhere else, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you can see, Sika will sit here, and then the window will sit flush.
Yeah.
So it'll be a flush wall. It's going to look beautiful.
I designed it this way so that, because I was thinking like cleaning, like making everything as easy as possible to clean down so you don't get mold and rubbish like that. And this area as well, the cooking is in this corner, so this is kind of the greasiest, grubbiest corner of the kitchen. So what I was thinking is aligning it so that the glass is perfectly flush with the stainless, and you can literally just, wipe the whole thing. So the glass is just sort of carries on from the stainless. There's no, dimples or raises or lowers or anything.
And some stickers and adhesives get quite mouldy, but the fix tech that we use is amazing, eh? We have a lot of confidence in that.
And it holds on like you wouldn't believe too. Like when you put the window on, that's enough to pass survey requirement. If there's enough, all the way around it, that's enough for the survey requirements to be met. So it's bloody strong. It's as strong as bolting a window in basically, because it allows for a little bit of movement, which is good. Whereas a bolt, you have to allow for holes in the window sort of thing, because the bolts will move around.
Because a boat vibrates a lot when it's moving over waves and being off, if it's big seas, or there's constant movement and constant vibration on a boat. It's not like a house.
I like this window.
It's beautiful.
I'm pleased with this window.
Yeah.
I had no idea if it was going to work. The whole thing was guesswork.
Of course, at the end of a job like this, one of the joys is crossing things off the list.
The best part.
This is the sidewall list.
A couple of things still to do.
And of course, this is the big wall list. We call it the wet bench or the AC wall. And there's a little bit more to do there.
I love you. I give you everything.